Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome back to part 2 of pruning up my larch forest. I was working on the forest a little bit this morning, plucking out needles and pruning branches back, so the work will continue this afternoon. It's another sunny, hot day today. The baobabs just love it. So they're starting to grow with some vigor now, which is good. You can see this shoot is extended quite a bit now. It's nice to see this one's starting to grow with some vigor. It's really good for these succulents. My desert rose are leafing out really nicely. My jade tree here, the baobab style jade, seems to be healing really well after the scarring of the trunk and taking that chunk off the top there. Seems to be skinning over, healing. I haven't seen any ill effects up top on the tree. It's still green and growing well. So that's a good sign. I'll keep my eyes on it over the next few weeks and show you some updates in the future. My crown of thorns, euphorbia here, is starting to flower. I've got a nice flower here. There's one over here. So that's just starting. And it usually flowers the entire summer. It's an amazing plant. My ficus microcarpa is looking really good. Can use a little pruning now, so that'll be coming up. Over here on the bench, I do have an azalea. This was given to me by David in Toronto, I think last year or maybe the year before. So it's in flower now. You can see the nice flower here, and there's another one coming out, or actually it's out. Yeah, and there's some other flower buds that are going to come. So that's exciting. It's a very young tree. I haven't done anything with it yet other than just water and fertilize it. The succulent bonsai sure are loving this hot and sunny weather. So now it's back to work on my larch forest. Okay. So some of the branches in the middle here, they're quite hard to reach, but you can do it, or you can use a pair of tweezers to get in there. But I find if you get your hands up underneath, you can get to those branches and needles on the interior. Ow! My scissors were in the sun and they're really hot. I can't even touch them. I better put them in the shade and let them cool down. Whew, that was hot. So if my scissors are that hot, you know some of the pots can get that hot too. This one feels pretty good because I just watered it. But something to watch if you have a dark colored pot and it's out in the sun. They can get really, really hot fast. And it'll kill all the roots that are near the edge of the pot, which are usually your feeder roots. So you have to be really careful. You can lose a tree in the heat. And I've done it. I've lost a larch because of the heat. So I'm just removing all the lower needles and any needles that are kind of pointing in towards the center of the tree I take out too. So I leave all the needles that are fanning out or growing upwards that are in the sunlight. The needles underneath the bottom of the tree don't get as much light anyway, so they're not quite as efficient, and it helps thin out the tree so you get light down to these lower branches. So it takes out that density up top. And I just keep, plucking out these needles. You can see it's really dense here. You can't see the branches or anything, so I just come in, just reach, pull out needles until it kind of exposes the branches. Like that. Just clumps of needles. So now you can see the structure of the branches, and now I start refining that needle plucking, removing my needles that are going downwards and needles that are going in towards the center of the tree. And eventually it exposes the structure of the tree, the branches, everything, so you can make pruning decisions. And it also brings light down to the forest floor and all these lower branches, which is really important. Otherwise they just die off. You have to have light to your branches. So the trees, they're quite full now. I wouldn't want to let them grow any more before I did this pruning and needle reduction. If I let them go more, I think some of the lower branches would start suffering. So this would be about the maximum amount of growth you can get on your tree before things start going bad. So letting it grow like this is good for the tree. So, you know, bonsai is a balance between keeping your trees shaped and healthy, or keeping them shaped in miniature and keeping them healthy. So you've got to let them grow to gain vigor and health, prune them back. And it's a never-ending cycle, and you're always balancing vigor of the trees with the shaping. Yeah, it's easy to grow trees, but to keep them miniature looking is harder. It takes technique and dedication. Like, anyone can stick a tree in a pot and grow a tree. You just have to water it and put it in the sun. But to keep them shaped, that's where it takes technique. And I'll see a lot of people, you know, just putting their trees in potting soil, and they say, oh, my tree's growing well in potting soil. I don't see any need for expensive bonsai soil. And, well, it works if you're just growing your tree, but if you want dense ramification, you have to have a dense root system to match. It's all tied together. Roots, top of the tree. I also think there's a lot of people that they get trees, like they either collect them or grow them from seeds, and they're in the ground, thickening up. And when they're in the ground, you're not learning any bonsai techniques. So I would rather see them in like a training pot, and then you would learn bonsai techniques. You'd learn a bit more about what the tree does and what it doesn't do. A tree in the ground is just plain vigorous. You can pretty well do anything to them. You can pretty well do anything to a tree in the ground and it'll recover and grow with health. When you start getting them in pots, the techniques change. And those are the techniques you have to learn. Sure, it's thickening up, but you're not really learning the techniques of bonsai. In fact, you may be doing the opposite. You might think, well, I can prune trees back severely because when they're in the ground I can do that, but when they're in pots it's way different. A lot of the times I'll come in with my fingers, I'll come in underneath the branch and just gently pull all the needles out. That technique works really well. It's called the two-finger technique. TFT. It's important to give an acronym to all your techniques. It's funny, I got all those old magazines from like the late 80s, early 90s, and nothing's really changed. They use the same soil we're using today. The techniques are pretty well the same. In fact, some of the techniques are probably better. Some of the old techniques seem to be kind of lost. But yeah, really interesting looking back in history at bonsai, old bonsai magazines and the culture. Most of the people in the magazines aren't around anymore, which is really sad because there were some really, really talented people. And I guess, you know, they're not forgotten, but not talked about a whole lot anymore. All the pioneers and that. It seemed more of a community back then. People all across the country went to events together, whereas now, you know, you've got the national show. That's about the only event that really attracts people cross country. But yeah, they seem to have more guests from Japan and more tours, and it just seemed to be more of an active community back then. And maybe it was because it was a smaller bonsai community and everyone knew each other. I don't see it quite so much today. I mean, we have a great online community, but we don't really meet up in person much. So I'm still thinning here. You can see why it takes so long. There's so much. I use the 2-finger technique there. There I go again. Just go underneath the branch. Grab all those downward facing needles. TFT, 2-finger technique. So if you ever wonder why at bonsai shows you don't see a lot of forests, this is probably why, is that they take a lot of work. It's not just one tree. Like in this forest, what is there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 trees in this forest. A group of 5 and a group of 3. So yeah, 8 trees. You're pruning 8 trees. It's a lot more than just doing a single tree, that's for sure. And it's because they can't grow. Like you can't grow your trees out. It takes quite a bit of different techniques. Or you have to be more precise with your techniques about keeping your trees small and shaped. Because you don't have unlimited room. You can't grow your trees larger, or they start interfering with each other and growing into a big bushy looking mess. All your lower branches will die. So as beautiful as forests are, they take a lot of work. That's probably why I let this tree grow so much, is that I knew it would be, you know, probably a 2-day operation pruning it. I was just waiting for the right time, and this is yesterday and today is it. It's time to get this pruned. And then next will be coming my Avatar Grove. That one needs a lot of pruning too. But it's nice to have enough trees that, you know, you can work on something every day. I have no problem with that. And if you can't keep up with all your trees, you know, you can let them have a growth spell and then come back to them. Hopefully you can get them back in check. It's really only with the refined trees that you really have to keep up on them. That letting them grow can actually start destroying some of that fine ramification and structure you've built up. But trees in training, I mean, you can let them grow for 3 years before you touch them, and they'll look better for it. Like they'll thicken up and ramify. Just do a hedge prune on them, and you'll have a great tree without very little work to them. Just a bit of hedge pruning, and you get this good looking tree. And then when you get time, then you can start working on it, detailed work on it, trying to improve the structure and really detail the tree. I have been working on the trees, and they're coming along quite nicely. Here's a look at them. So I've got them down to the point where I can see all the branches, and I'm starting to do a little detailed pruning out some of the branches in the apex to get them to flow nice. If this branch is crossing in towards the center like this one, I will prune it out like that. Typical pruning operations, dividing from one branch to 2, removing, crossing branches, resolving issues, thinning my apex. So it's coming along quite nicely. So I have a little work to go still. Needle thinning, some more refinement, and then I'll be starting on the landscape. Well, after many hours, I have finished pruning up the large forest. That spring growth is very vigorous, and then each flush of growth after the first one, the vigor gets less and less. So the next flush of growth that comes in will probably be quite small and delicate, and it'll continue that way until fall, where the flushes will become very small and miniature looking. I'm going to work on the landscape now, pruning up the moss, and that will complete the work on the larch forest. Somewhere in here I have my dry waterfall or stream bed. It's overgrown, so I'll prune all the moss back, leaving some moss bushes here and there, trying to make kind of a realistic landscape. I'll use my curved scissors for pruning up the moss, so here I go, just kind of trimming it back from the stream bed. And I'll have to pull the moss out of the stream bed if there's some growing in it. Prune a bit of the moss away from my cave here, so you can see my cave a little better. So I'm after variation in the landscape, so the moss isn't all even. There'll be some long, some short, some medium, and I'll prune separation into it so they look like clumps of foliage, not just one big green blob growing across the landscape. And I like to have a sight line towards the trunks of the trees so they're not blocked by moss, so you can see the root base, if possible. The curved scissors are good for rounding the bushes. It kind of gives a natural shape to them. But you don't have to use curved scissors. You can use straight scissors too. And I want to clear the moss away from the rocks. Not totally. You want some moss around the edges of the rocks, but you don't want the moss covering up the rocks totally. Otherwise, there's no point having a stone there. The pruning also gets the moss a little tighter so it doesn't have all the loose ends sticking up. It kind of makes it a little more, well, compact, I guess is the word. So my stream bed is kind of full of moss. I'll have to pick it out. I have to use the tweezers on that. Pruning the upper part of the tree sure lets a lot more light down here on the landscape, which is important. It'll keep your moss healthy. Moss won't grow very well in the shade unless you have a real good shade moss, but that usually doesn't look very good in spring when the trees don't have any needles on them. The moss dies off because of the sunlight. So the little robins have definitely flown the nest. The mother's not attacking me anymore. She's taking care of her babies. She brings food to them. I can see them sitting on the fence and hopping around, trying to fly. I'm sure they'll be all gone by the end of the day today or tomorrow. They'll have grown up and will become adults. I've completed the work on the larch forest. I still have to clean the landscape up, but I'm running out of time because I have to water all my trees outside tonight. It was a very hot and dry day today. So the forest is looking good. It's come a long way from that, green, overgrown bush that it used to look like. Yeah, I'll show you a shot of it before. I'm starting the work on the larch forest early in the morning because I think it'll take me a long time to get it all pruned up and looking good. And here is the after. So I still have to clean the landscape up and do some more kind of detailing on it. But that'll be for tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll get some nice shots of it. And we'll come back and make any adjustments that I've missed. I've just got to get watering my trees tonight. It's nice to see the larch forest all pruned up and looking more like a miniature forest once again. I'll be doing a little bit of work on it in tomorrow's video, just cleaning it up and getting some beauty shots of it, and then I'll go on to another project. That is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.